Hello, I'm Mehinur Raghib, an English teacher for adults at Forest University here in Alexandria, Egypt. Welcome to a new podcast where we discuss teaching English for beginners and elementary students. In this podcast, I'll provide you with tips on how to teach lower level students skills, grammar, and vocabulary. Today's episode is all about speaking, so let's jump right into it. So I've been teaching English as a second language for almost 7 years now. When I started teaching, I wondered why my students are always shy and fear to speak in class. I never put myself in their shoes to know why. Well, today we'll try and put ourselves as teachers in our students' shoes to know why they fear speaking. Learning a new language is hard, and learning to speak in English or in a new language is extremely difficult. It's known that language learners have anxiety and fear of speaking, so that's due to lots of reasons. But today we'll tackle 3 factors. So, let's imagine yourself or ourselves sitting in a big theatre watching a magician, and suddenly you are asked to join him or her on stage to help with a trick. Everybody's watching you, so the anxiety kicks in and you do not know what to expect next. Well, this is how our learners feel when they are asked to speak in class. So then, what to do about that? The second factor is that students lack vocabulary they need to use while speaking. So, to overcome that, you have to ask yourself, how do we teach vocabulary or new vocabulary? Do I provide the students with, let's say, 5 new words and 5 new definitions and ask them to understand the words and also recall them? Or do I provide them with a context? When I say context, I mean a listening text where the words are there, provided, or a reading text, or you come up with a story, or even sometimes using pictures. Well, using a context helps students recall words easily, and it's more relatable, so they can recall the words from the context you provided them. Also, encourage your students to find new words from movies or songs or anything that they might see or come across and introduce it to the class. So the class will use it later on in other speaking activities, and try and make a habit of it. So each time you nominate a different student and ask them to provide the class with 2 or 3 new words, so their vocabulary bank will get bigger and bigger by the end of the course, and they will use it in other speaking activities. I always encourage my students, beginner students, especially to listen to songs, because they do listen to English songs, and to read the lyrics and write down any sort of new word for them, and they show up the next class with these words. It's a fun way of finding new words that has nothing to do with textbooks. Also, a good tip for helping students to overcome that lack of vocabulary is repetition. So, repeating the words help students to recall the words easily. So let's say one of your aims is for the students, beginner students, to be able to describe each other or describe personalities or appearances. So each time you ask a student to do that, provide them with the words that they've had in order to describe a friend or describe appearance or personality. Each time you give them or provide them with the words or remind them of the words, the easier they will recall these words. Okay. The last factor for overcoming that fear of speaking is lack of ideas. So students often don't know what to say, and when you ask them to do a speaking activity in class and you ask a student about something, they would just say, well, I don't know what to say, I have no idea. So imagine you ask a beginner student, let's say, what's your opinion of global warming? And that student says nothing. They don't utter a word. And rightly so. But if you ask the beginner to describe their best friend, or describe what they're wearing, or describe the weather, or describe the favorite footballer, and they say some words like tall, short, curly hair, or hot, cold, summer, winter, and when they say a complete sentence, you've achieved your aim. You have to make sure that when you ask a student to talk about something, or when you provide them with a speaking activity, it has to be relatable. And it's very important to be within the level, because a beginner student doesn't know what global warming is, but probably will know the weather, clothes, and describing personality, maybe good, bad. Please make sure and always remember that you have to encourage your student when they speak, because if you have a beginner student who uttered some words but couldn't provide a full sentence, you have to encourage them and also help them to achieve and provide a full good sentence. Doing it once and twice will lead for them to be able to say 1 and 2 complete sentences on their own. So encouraging and supporting is very important for a beginner student to overcome their fear of speaking. So that's it for today's episode. We discussed the very first step of teaching beginner students, which is overcoming fear of speaking. And for our next episode, we'll discuss teaching reading skills for beginners. So I hope you enjoyed listening, and please tune in for our next episode. Bye.